Hello, and welcome to the Amazon Web Services Partner Webinar Series. Our topic today will feature how to manage big data analytics using SAP HANA One on AWS. I'm your moderator, Sherry Sullivan. I'm with the Partner Marketing team here in Seattle, and I'd like to start with just a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording today's webinar, and while your lines are muted, we do invite you to submit your questions anytime during the presentation. Simply use the Q&A feature in your browser, and we'll take a few moments at the close of today's webcast to address your questions. In addition, we will make this presentation available for on-demand, and you'll find the webinar recording and materials available on the AWS SlideShare and YouTube channels. I'm pleased to be joined today by Ray Kelly, who's a principal with Rennie Tui, one of our advanced consulting partners at AWS, as well as Steve Jones, who is a senior SAP Solutions architect with Amazon Web Services. We'll begin with Steve providing an overview of the AWS platform and some of the benefits of SAP on AWS, followed by Ray, who will take us through an overview of SAP HANA One, as well as some use cases and considerations for implementation and integration with SAP HANA One on AWS to manage your big data. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you, Steve. Welcome, Steve and Ray.
Great, thanks, Sherry, and welcome to those on the phone. I'm obviously pleased to be also here with Ray. We have some exciting things to talk about today as it relates to SAP on AWS and specifically HANA One. Before we get into some of those specifics, I'd like to talk just a little bit about what Amazon Web Services is. Now, there are three main parts to the Amazon business. The first is our retail consumer business, where Amazon stocks and ships many thousands of different products. And I think most of us at some point in time have used the online retail store to buy books, CDs, and whatnot for our friends and family. But there's also our seller business that enables retailers to sell through the same online store as Amazon. And then finally, there's our Amazon Web Services, which is our IT infrastructure business. This is what we'll be talking about today. Now, we offer IT infrastructure globally, and our data center footprint is global. It's spanning 5 continents. These are highly redundant clusters of data centers in each of these regions. And again, as I mentioned, our footprint is continuously expanding. And as we listen to our customers and we get feedback from them on where we should expand, we'll continue to add locations around the world as we want to meet those needs. Now, this is just a simple view of the set of services that we offer. At the core is the compute, storage, and data services that really at the heart of our offering. And then what we do is we surround these offerings with a range of supporting components like management tools, networking services, and application augmentation services. And again, all of this is hosted within our global data center footprint that allows you to consume services without having to build out those facilities or buy that equipment yourself. Now, from a scale perspective, I just wanted to give you an idea of how fast we're growing this IT infrastructure footprint. This is just a point of reference about that scale. And in 2003, Amazon.com was a $5 billion technology-powered retail business. And when we measure the capacity growth rate of our current AWS environments, we find that we add enough server capacity every day to power the 2003 era Amazon business, and that's every day. And so we're adding a lot of capacity to meet the demand of those who are looking to leverage this IT infrastructure. And at Amazon, we sponsored a study by IDC where they interviewed a group of our customers to really get a sense of the results that folks are getting from using AWS. And the results were quite favorable, with the aggregate numbers showing significant cost savings combined with better results in terms of reduced downtime. And we're proud to deliver both benefits simultaneously, and we don't sacrifice quality to reduce these costs. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But what we're most proud about is that our customers can demonstrate the benefits themselves. I would encourage you to take a look at this article and read the full report to get idea of the full details, and it's available on our website. Now, you might have questions about security in the cloud, but our biggest and most conservative customers have found that we're able to meet their security requirements. And often we can provide a better security profile than what folks can deliver internally. Our focus and investment in security and the fact that we incorporate requirements from most security-conscious customers really benefits all the customers that run on our platform. And this allows us to offer an effective approach to meeting enterprise security requirements. Again, we also encourage you to dig deeper with our security white papers. There have been many webinars devoted just to this topic. There's a lot of information that will help you feel confident in our security capabilities and options around that. So now that you know some of the main problems and what our customers are looking to do on AWS, I'd like to talk just a little bit about why customers are choosing AWS as an infrastructure platform for their SAP environments. Now, with traditional infrastructure, you have to guess how much capacity you're going to need, typically over the next 3 to 7 years, and pay for most of it or all of it on day one. And this really ties up money that you could be spending on other things, and it's very difficult to forecast accurately over such a long period of time. And so what you find is that often you're not able to predict, and either you end up spending more money for infrastructure you don't need at the given point in time, or you don't plan as well as you'd like, and so you end up needing to purchase additional capacity. With AWS, what you do is you pay for what you need when you need it. Now, the second benefit is that we're offering IT infrastructure at a much lower cost. Since we invest and operate at such a high scale, we pay less per unit, if you think about it, than most anybody else in the IT industry. And so we run our business on a very high volume, low margin basis. And this is pretty unique. And this combination of high scale and low margin allows us to pass significant savings along to our customers. And in fact, the proof point of this is over 27 price reductions in our compute services over time. I alluded to this just a moment ago, but with the elasticity of AWS, you no longer need to forecast demand and buy up front. And so what you do is you get the ability to scale up to meet the demands of spiky workloads, but then you also are able to give that capacity back when that spike is over. When dealing with annual spikes, like December retail booms, monthly or quarterly spikes or month end, you're able to spin up additional capacity and again give that back and stop paying for that. And there's real value to be gained in this on-demand capability. We see also customers doing amazing things when it comes to reducing the cost of experimentation. It really removes IT from being a roadblock where each idea can cost a lot of time and money to just get off the ground, to really IT becoming an enabler where you can launch a project very quickly and cheaply. And it allows firms to take more chances on ideas and gives them really a shot at winning big as opposed to being scared to even get off the ground sometimes. And let's face it, racking and stacking gear in the data center just doesn't help you, win over your competition. It takes a lot of time, a lot of money, and becomes a big distraction for a lot of shops. And IT isn't most often one that really can truly differentiate you from your competitors. Plus, without the big economies of scale, these activities can just simply cost you more. Also, if you think about it, since we've invested in facilities around the world, we can offer a global reach for an IT footprint at a moment's notice. It's typically cost prohibitive to put your own data centers and to run more than one where all your customers are, but with AWS, you get the benefit without having to make the upfront and huge investment in additional data centers. So while there's a lot of talk about private cloud being just as good as public cloud, the benefits that our customers enjoy just aren't possible with gear that goes in private data centers, even if it has private cloud attributes. Since you have to buy the equipment up front from high-margin vendors, and run it in a data center that you rent or own, the big costs and operational benefits just aren't possible in a private cloud model. And so we're also developing a lot of tooling and options, and we understand that customers are in different phases in their adoption of cloud technology. And so we've put, again, a lot of tooling in place to allow you to integrate your own on-premise data center and footprints so that you can basically just extend that with the AWS infrastructure and move your own applications and workloads at your own pace. So when we talk about SAP Certified Solutions on AWS, and we'll talk more about HANA specifically, we're pretty much getting to the point where there aren't really workloads that you can't run on the AWS platform. The full business suite has been certified by SAP. Basically anything that runs on NetWeaver, ABAP, or Java, as well as the other solutions we'll talk about today, and specifically HANA One. Now, there are a lot of use cases for SAP on AWS. A lot of folks use AWS for demo training, proof of concept environments, but there are a lot of customers as well that run production deployments. Everything from SAP Afaria to Business Suite to Business Objects, and especially HANA. We'll talk about that as well. And we have a great partnership with SAP, and we've also put together a lot of collateral to help you get started. At this link here, you'll see a lot of case studies and white papers, as well as support information for when you operate your SAP solution on AWS. One of the things we find with our customers is that a partner really makes a difference. And I'm pleased to introduce Ray Kelly from Run E2E. They are one of our go-to partners for SAP solutions, and specifically HANA on AWS. And at this time, I'd like to turn the time over to Ray.
Hey, thanks a bunch, Stephen. I appreciate that background. And I know the conference today is a lot about HANA and using HANA on AWS, but it's always great to get that input and prerequisite of the Amazon infrastructure layer, and really like it. I'm an old SAP zealot, and just really excited about how quickly you can turn on most of your SAP assets now in the cloud. And if you come from the background where I came from, there was hundreds of servers that were supplying your SAP system, and it seemed like every day you needed a new server for the new product. And again, when I look at what Amazon can offer, it's just an unbelievable benefit to customers. So I always like to get that input. So thanks a bunch for that. So here's a little bit of background on myself. We don't need that too much. We'll move on to the next slide. Really talking about HANA and really getting into, what is this HANA today? And it's in-memory computing, and I'm sure you've heard that word many times. It's nothing new. If you're an old programmer like me, you always moved your data into an internal table and screamed through that table to try to get some results. So it's just really technology that's been around, and due to the sharp price drop in memory, it's become viable now to use your data in a memory set instead of a database storage set like a disk. So again, nothing new. It just allows the processing of massive quantities of data inside your memory. And SAP has a great tool called HANA that runs on Amazon that we'll talk about in the subsequent slides, that I think is a great avenue for a lot of customers to take for your big data and some of the issues you might have crunching that big data. It's a modern platform. It's real-time analysis. This is HANA. It's been around in the SAP world for the better part of 2.5 years now, and they've been working on it for about 6 years. It's really just all about in-memory technology. It's now taking your data, which will no longer reside on a database, and it resides in memory. It's real-time, accessible anytime you need it, millions of rows accessible at your fingertips. It does come in different flavors, and this is probably some confusion to customers, and we're hoping to alleviate some of that. There's the HANA memory application. It's really just a standalone database. You could run just about anything on it. So when you're looking to put a Microsoft database or an Oracle database together, you actually can use the HANA database now. So it's its own platform. You don't even need the SAP system or any type of SAP application. You can actually write your own application in HANA. That's the memory platform. And then there's HANA on BW. This is where you transfer your BW today as it sits reading the disk into BW that will read the HANA database. And basically you're going to transform all of your info cubes and info objects, and these are some technical terms, but for your BW folks, they should resonate with you. You convert them into HANA-like data structures, and then you load that data into the HANA database. And the end result is you have faster access to that data because it's sitting in memory. You don't have to worry about your aggregates and a lot of the subsequent things that you needed to worry about in SAP BW. These are all taken care for you on HANA. So today's SAP BW environment, you have to get to a certain release patch, and when you get to that certain release patch and version, you then can migrate to the HANA database. You can run the business suite on SAP HANA. This is probably the newest introduction over the last 18 months that SAP has made, is allowing you to run that ECC system and allowing you to run that CRM system using the HANA database in the background. Again, no difference to your application that you have today, other than it could be very, very fast. And what you see a lot of customers doing today is using some business suite functions in what we call a sidecar scenario next to their existing SAP ECC system, for instance. So in a good business case example, you see folks moving their MRP run onto a sidecar ECC system that's running HANA. And where their MRP run might have taken 4 to 6 hours in a given day, it now can take 20 to 40 minutes to run, much faster, much quicker, and now they can run multiple MRPs, for instance, in a day and really understand the inventory and the needs of that inventory in the production world. So you see a lot of business suite on HANA that's running more or less in a sidecar type of implementation. But lo and behold, in a few years, just about every SAP implementation can come out with a HANA database in the back, and I wouldn't be surprised if most of them will be running HANA at some point. And then last but least is the HANA One solution on AWS, and that actually is a combination of all the above. It's really the HANA One solution, and it's available on Amazon, and it could satisfy any one of those requirements that are above it. It's a smaller version of what you might get in your HANA system on-premise. I think there's a 256 or 500 or so megabyte memory capacity when you bring it on-site. When you leverage the Amazon HANA One, you get 60 gigabytes of memory available to you. So a little less on the machine, but every single piece of functionality is identical to what you would get on-premise. And again, the way that HANA stores the data, this is a good note to understand. You might be looking at a system today that has X amount of gigabytes of space, maybe even a terabyte of space. When you migrate your data to HANA, there's compression algorithms that take place. It's not necessarily compressing the data, it's the way it stores the data in a columnar database structure that HANA uses that allows it to compress the data per se. Also, there's a lot of redundant data that sits in your ECC system today, for instance. There might be 17 or 18 tables that have some information to do with the material master is a great example, and there's some duplication of that data. When you bring it into HANA, you don't need to duplicate that data, and some of the HANA algorithms, when it pulls that data, understands that when it loads it in. So you do get some compression of 5, 10, 15 times compression from what your database looks like today to what your database would look like in HANA. So I don't want to get anyone concerned about the less memory space that you get on the HANA One solution. It is viable for some of the largest tables and the largest big data analytics that you have today. So again, wrapping up, that's really just the different flavors of HANA. And obviously most recently is SAP has come out with HANA One Premium. So you can go to SAP now and sign up for an annual subscription on HANA One where they support it as well. So there's always some questions from our customers on how am I going to support the solution. Amazon is an infrastructure, self-service type of environment, so they'll give you support up and below the machine, so to speak, and then you need an application service provider to help you with the support of that application running. Well, SAP here has kind of defined that for customers now, and you can sign up for an annual subscription kind of maintenance and support contract will they'll allow you, will they'll provide you support on this. So this is a great recent development from SAP. I like it. It just, again, furthermores the conversations around this is real, it's viable, it's commercially viable, sitting in the Amazon cloud, and they're now supporting it for their customers. So I think that's a great move by SAP most recently to allow customers, to leverage this environment, and if they have concerns about support, they're now providing that support to you. Sorry about that, my slide deck took a bit to get there. But now in the HANA and in-memory solutions, SAP has always had in-memory solutions. So HANA is, while it's new from a term and a marketing terminology, it's really not new to SAP. They've had the Business Warehouse Accelerator, and some of you may be on that today. They've had Business Objects Explorer, which they still have today. They have the NetWeaver Enterprise Search, the CRM customer segmentation, APO, and even the Business by Design analytics. So SAP has been in and around the in-memory technology for many years. HANA is just kind of an addition to that. They finally have taken it further to where they've taken over that memory from a database perspective. As I mentioned before, I'm an old programming hat, and we always move things into internal tables, and that was kind of the memory that SAP had for years, and now they've provided it from a database kind of perspective. So again, that's just some history. HANA is not necessarily new for SAP. It's just the culmination of many predecessor products that they've strung together, and now they've called it HANA. It's here for the long haul. I mentioned a little bit earlier in one of the slides, I wouldn't be surprised if going forward, most every application of SAP will be delivered first and foremost in the SAP HANA database. So they're here for the long haul. They've structured it in a way that it's for the long haul. It's commercially viable today and will be in subsequent years. So again, this is a product that is not one of these flash products that SAP has come out with in the past. It's here. They're committed to it. And I would probably venture to believe most of their development effort over in Waldorf is surrounded by some type of HANA type of activity. Typical use cases, proven business intelligence use cases, right? Obviously, data is doubling every 18 months. It's quadrupling every 3 years. Unbelievable amounts of data are coming into the market and into your enterprise, and your CEO, your C-level executives, your direct manager wants access to that immediately. So obviously, it's at the right time having in-memory solutions. They're absolutely necessary with the large volumes of data that we have and the need and the desire to consume that data, right? It starts every morning in our palm of our hands where we want to look at everything on our mobile device, and it could be anything from looking at content about a news story to email, right? All of this is generating data, and it's also generating this, this mind of ours to be controlled by instantaneous access to something. And again, there's a lot of cases where the business intelligence is looking for data. There's large volumes of data. They do need access to it immediately where they can make business decisions immediately. Some areas that SAP has improved on with their HANA One, and this is on the bottom of the slide around the new capabilities, they're actually just growing this HANA One footprint larger and larger. So they recognize that a lot of customers have gone to the HANA One system and they've used it from a reporting perspective to load data, and then they said, well, why can't we develop on it, or we can develop on it, but I need an application web server, or I need this predictive analytics library, which I'll talk about in a minute, or text analytics, right? So they're increasing and improving, the use of this HANA system. So in the beginning, I just had large pieces of data I want to crunch. Well, now I've got large pieces of data that I don't know how to crunch and present, so you have to help me with that. And I'll talk a little bit about this predictive analytics library down the road, but it's just a series of algorithms and subroutines that SAP has written to help you kind of look at data and kind of understand the aggression of the data as it goes along. I like to always talk a little bit about the HANA One architecture and kind of what it is and what does it mean when you go ahead and use it. it sits, and if you're familiar with Amazon and you're not familiar with Amazon, hopefully this slide can clear some things up. But when you procure a system in Amazon, you're getting a computer, and sometimes you're getting a virtual machine on a computer, and maybe there's 4 other virtual machines on that one computer. But either way, you get cores and you get CPUs and you get disk space. So with HANA, when you go and use HANA in the cloud here for Amazon, you get 16 cores. So that's kind of, when you think about how HANA works and how it makes processing of data even faster than just memory, it actually processes the data in each core, and a query runs in each single core so that it can even run even faster than you could imagine one query running sequentially. So important to understand, you're getting 16 CPUs, 60 gigabytes of RAM, and with HANA, just like the internal system that you use with HANA on-premise, half of that memory has to be reserved for the HANA engine, so to speak. So when you get 60, you get 30 where you can store the data. You get 500 gigabytes of storage. You still need storage with HANA. The only storage that you need is the HANA database needs to be able to run continuously, meaning it's got to offload its data into a disk, so in case it crashes or you turn it off, it then can go and get that data. So there's still some storage elements associated with it. HANA, it's the same on-premise as it would be in Amazon. When you turn it off, it's going to download all that data that's sitting in memory to the storage disk, and when you turn it back on, it's going to upload it from the storage disk to the memory. You get a 10 gigabyte network, and you get 1 VM per physical server. So what we mean here is there's no one else running on your machine. When you go to Amazon and you get your HANA One, you have a dedicated virtual machine, physical machine relationship. So that's your machine. No one else is going to use it, and it's dedicated just to you, which sometimes is important to customers to make sure no one else is using the machine at the same time from a performance perspective or things of that nature. But nonetheless, it's your dedicated machine. So really what you're thinking of is I'm going out into the cloud and I'm buying a 16 CPU machine that's dedicated to me to run my business intelligence on. So how do we go and get some HANA? Well, Stephen had talked about the 3 businesses that Amazon is in, the first being the consumer business. Well, lo and behold, they have set up the Amazon environment, Amazon Web Services environment, very similar to your consumer experience that you'd have on their consumer business. You literally go to a website, you have to have some prerequisite experience in using Amazon, but it is very point and click and very consumer-like. You're going to go ahead and buy it, and again, you're buying an instance of HANA that will be moved into your Amazon domain, and I could talk a little bit about that in some subsequent slides about what that means. But nonetheless, you're going to a website and you're buying this. And it's interesting, the biggest issue that I have with customers is a lot of them want an invoice and not a credit card, because Amazon very quickly will allow you to put a credit card in it and start procuring your services. So if you went into the Amazon, aws.amazon.com, went into what's called the AWS Marketplace, searched on HANA, it would come up with the information right here just about the description of what you're buying. But eventually you'd get through these series of screens and you'd click on Purchase, and then an instance would be built inside your Amazon domain that runs HANA One. So here's just kind of telling you about the price of it, and it's 99 cents an hour, which is the license that you pay to SAP, which is all embedded in this cost. And then you have a few dollars where you pay for the CPU charge and some of the storage services for Amazon. So it literally is $3.50, I think, is the total cost, or somewhere around there, to procure yourself HANA. And one of the beauties of Amazon is you do not get charged, very similar to your utility bill at home, so to speak. If you shut your lights off, you don't get charged for electricity. It's the same in Amazon. If you turn Amazon off, you will not get charged your fee for either the license or your computing processing that you're spending on. So again, very utility-based, very set up for development environments where you can shut it off and you don't use it. In a productive environment, you may not need it on all the time. You can turn it off. And it's very prescriptive. Amazon has APIs that can allow you to turn it off. There's schedules for allow you to build to say turn it on at this point, turn it off at this point towards the end of the night. So again, very utility-based, very powerful from a savings perspective. When you look at what HANA may cost you to bring it internally, this is a great environment. At minimum, if it doesn't meet your memory capacity, at minimum it's a great environment to start a project with and do most of your HANA development. And then if you think you need more memory and storage, then obviously you might have to use your on-premise option. But nonetheless, this environment is here, ready to go, and very quickly you can jumpstart your environment. Oh, let me just go back one here because I think I missed a slide. Oh, maybe I didn't miss one. Here are some of the technical details, and I typically tell the customer at this point you should be thinking about having someone that is more HANA, not HANA specific, but Amazon specific. I think I called it some HANA geeks or some Amazon geeks. At this point, I would start thinking about getting some technical acumen. While you can go and have a consumer experience of clicking buttons, putting in your credit card, and getting the Amazon system, if you're not technical, I would just caution you, I think, to get some HANA geeks here to help you out. And the one note here, too, is the costs are based on usage. So again, what Amazon is showing you here is very quickly when you procure it, you see a dollar amount of $2,500 for the month. And what Amazon is estimating is that if you run this thing every day, every hour, every minute throughout the month, this is what's going to cost. And that's fine from a productive perspective. If you're in a development environment, training environments, QA environments, those things might be able to be turned down at night, on weekends, holidays, things of that nature. So it's even that much less than your bill would be. Get a lot of questions on, once I get this HANA system up and configured, how does it even work? How do I connect to it? How do things, how does the scenario look to me? And in a very simple kind of configuration, and this is what I'm laying out here, you would put your HANA system up in the cloud. You then would download what's called a HANA Studio, which is, again, a client, just like your SAP GUI today. For those of you who are familiar with that, you download a piece of software onto your hard drive of your computer, and it needs some configuration settings like where's the IP address or what's the host name of the SAP system. Very similar here. So in one scenario here called the standalone, in the morning, you could be setting up your HANA system, buying it, getting it configured very quickly through a script that SAP has provided. Takes about 20 minutes to get it started, to change the passwords. You download the HANA Studio, you connect into your HANA system, and in a very short time, you are now connected to HANA and can build anything that you would like in HANA. Most importantly, you can start building tables and load your data into the tables. So very simple scenario right here called the standalone scenario. Don't need any IT help per se from a technology or network or infrastructure perspective for my company. Right now I just want to stand up HANA. Maybe I want to take a flat file that I've got on my drive here on my PC and upload it into the system and start looking at how that data performs and reacts, maybe even use some of that predictive analytics library that SAP has to kind of understand some of the intelligence in that data. Another scenario, and this is probably more of the commercial scenarios, this is where now I'm going to connect the HANA system to my back end. And I have two options that I can connect it, and I'm talking about my back end as your corporate enterprise. So Amazon, very quickly, their whole environment that you purchase from them, okay, and again, you can go out and you can buy a HANA system, you can put your business objects system out there, you can put your SAP ECC system out there, and very quickly through a VPN connection, you can connect your whole data center to the Amazon cloud. And in that case, you wouldn't be able to access your HANA cloud unless you were accessing your data center. So a lot of customers put a very quick what's called VPN connection between the Amazon cloud system, which is theirs, and their own internal corporate network. And now, very simply, you can transfer files between that. Amazon, with some configuration settings, understands host names and things of that nature. If you wanted to pull the data from a certain host, Amazon would understand that by building this VPN connection between your enterprise infrastructure and data center to the Amazon data center. And Amazon even has another alternative called Direct Connect, and they've gone out and have a number of suppliers in the large cities that will provide what's called a Direct Connect service. So it's a direct line between your data center and the Amazon data center. So in the event you want to run productive systems, test systems, development systems that need to connect with maybe some legacy systems that you might have inside your four walls, you can very quickly do that with the VPN connection. You can accelerate it with the Direct Connect connection, allowing data to transfer a lot faster than maybe this VPN connection. While this VPN connection is private, it's a virtual private network, and it's encrypted and data secure, it still goes through some of the public lines of the internet, where a Direct Connect will directly go from your enterprise to the Amazon enterprise. And again, if I look at some of those scenarios, I have customers that start with standalone, maybe have some large tables that they FTP into the Amazon HANA One client or upload it if they want to, and then start accessing that data and seeing the benefits of HANA. That's a very, kind of out of the gate, point A type of scenario. And then I see customers migrate into the second scenario where they've got a VPN connection, direct connection into their data center. How do I get my data to HANA? Well, the first one is this FTP flat file migration, right? If I'm sitting in a standalone environment, I've got a client on my PC that might be connected to my network. I can download the data from my BW Cube, for instance. I then can upload the data into the HANA environment that I'm in a standalone environment I've connected to, and I understand the IP address and things of that nature. That's the simplest way out of the gate if you want to do a quick prototype. The second is you can use SAP Data Services. So if you have business objects, okay, you can configure it so it'll move data into HANA. In this particular case, you'd have to have that VPN connection potentially if that data services is sitting on your data center. It would need to talk to the HANA system, and in that case, you might have to have a virtual private connection or a direct connect. You also can use what's called the SAP LT replication server. Okay, and this again would be sitting in your data center, attached perhaps to your BW system or your ECC system, and it connects into the HANA system. And the same connection that you would do internally, you can do with the HANA system in the cloud. You just have to be sure you can access it. How you access it is either setting up a VPN connection between Amazon and your company so that it can communicate and see that particular HANA address, for instance, where the HANA system is in. And then SAP has something called the SAP HANA Cloud Integration Tool. This is actually a kind of a SAP Data Services tool set that SAP now is allowing customers to use. I believe there's no charge to use it, but don't quote me on that, and I will make sure I address that in a follow-up. But I believe SAP is allowing that to be used, especially in the cases where you want to move data from your internal data center into a cloud environment like the HANA. So it's SAP Data Services Lite is kind of what I call it. You don't have to buy the full SAP Data Services license. It's some runtime objects that allow you to pull data from your BW system, your ECC system, or some files, database tables that might be in your internal data center over into the cloud. So again, it's the same, some of the points of this slide is to move the data is the same technologies you might have today. Data services has been around for a while. FTP files and flat file migration has been around for a while, so there's nothing new there. The SAP LT replication server has been around for probably 3 or 4 years, most recently being used in the HANA scenario. So again, if you already have comfort using that, it's very simple to use that in this particular scenario. So again, moving data between the two, not a huge concern, or at least I don't see it as a huge concern. Consuming data from SAP HANA One, again, very simple as well. The whole business object suite works and connects into the HANA, and I've got some subsequent slides on how that's going to work. They have some new tools, SAP Visual Intelligence, and I think they just renamed this, so I apologize. I was supposed to change this slide. It's some Italian flower or some type of flower name that they now have moved most of their names to. But SAP Visual Intelligence is a newer tool that SAP has recently released, connects right into HANA, and allows you to visualize your data with some neat visualization and graphs. And then they have a new tool called HANA Info Access. So again, it's a new tool they created. You give it its configuration setting for the HANA One system. You tell it what table you want. It pulls it down. And a lot like Business Objects Explorer that runs on your iPad, this tool similarly runs on your iPad, and you can develop some reports. So again, they've got old school where Business Objects connects directly into HANA and allows you to use it just like you're pulling from an SAP BW query or some type of SQL table. They've got two new tools, SAP Visual Intelligence and SAP the Info Access via the iPad. So net on those last slides is more or less SAP is right there. You can use the old tools. You can use the new tools. Now I'm just going to go into a little bit of how easy it is to use the business objects and creating a particular universe. Right, so again, I'm now and for you techies out there, I'm now in the Universe Designer for SAP Business Objects. And I don't think you need to follow this technically, but if you can get the gist of it, it's to show you how simply you now can access your HANA One data. So I've loaded a table into HANA One. I've described what the table should look like. It's sitting in HANA One. Now I go through a series of screens to build a connection for a data source and then build what the universe should look like. And again, it's not very difficult. It now says, okay, I want to go get from HANA. SAP has a driver for SAP HANA One. It clicks up. It says, what's the username? What's the password? You go ahead and give it that. You then click on a button. It says, yes, the server's responding. Sorry about that. My slides take a little bit of a delay. Sorry. Now it comes up and you've built this connection to the HANA One system, and now it says, okay, let's build a table. It's now showing me all the tables that are in my HANA One system. I choose one, and now I've got my what's called my universe, right, which allows me to build a report on it. So again, it's a series of 6 screens. I connect to HANA. I tell it where HANA is. I select the table that I want to build this what's called universe on. And now that I have my universe, I go over to my Webby Report Builder. And now what Webby Report wants is, what universe are you going to build this report on? I go and choose one. I say connect onto the HANA. I called it HANA. It now brings all those fields in that I just brought in as the universe. And now I'm building my report. And very quickly, I now have my report from HANA. So again, the net of all these slides, the last 4 or 5 slides that I'm showing, is that very quickly you can either leverage your existing tools when you put the HANA in the cloud. You can leverage some new tools like the data services, the cloud integration that maybe you haven't used before. On the reporting side, you can leverage your old school tools like Business Objects. Now you have to be on Business Objects 4.0, or you can use some of the newer tools like the Hub Info Access and the Visual Intelligence. And I think I have some other subsequent slides that go into the Visual Intelligence. So again, it's another client. You download it from SAP. It sits on your desktop. I think they have an offer where they're giving out a 90-day trial for free. And very quickly it says, where's your data source? You say it's HANA. Where's your HANA environment? You describe it. And it comes up, with your report. The HANA Info Access, very similar. It's a client that you download to your iPad. It then says, where's my HANA environment? You give it its parameters. What table would you like to read? It goes and brings it in and allows you to develop. Now, of course, I jumped a couple slides and I didn't show you all of the development screens, but you would develop, reading that table, you would develop some type of graph to give you this end result. But again, the net is they're making it very easy to connect into your HANA world, and it doesn't matter if it's in your four walls or in the Amazon cloud. It'll still connect and it'll run your reports. A little bit about the PAL library. Now again, SAP now has given you subroutines, algorithms, things to take a look at your data, mine it for certain events that are taking place within your data. So again, with large volumes of data, and I get into very scientific here about the process of analyzing data from a scientific world, SAP has given you 20 or so algorithms called the PAL library, the Predictive Analytics Library. These sit in your HANA system, and they can run in the Amazon system. So no difference, again, than what you would have internally. You would have the same thing externally in your Amazon cloud. So again, the environments can look identical from what you might have on-premise in HANA to what you have in the cloud on HANA. So again, it's bringing the algorithms to the data, not the data to the algorithms, similar to Business Function Library, which is again a kind of series of algorithms that SAP has had. It gives you the ability to have these pre-developed functions to apply to your data. And in here it lists some high-level functions that you can get. But again, all this comes with your HANA One system. All this comes with your HANA One system in the Amazon cloud. So a great way to start using some of this predictive analytics for a large table. So again, I see some POCs that customers are doing on-premise around using the predictive analytics library against large data sets. It's something very simply and easily that we could do in the Amazon cloud as well. And you don't have that infrastructure commitment in the beginning. You don't even have to worry about the licensing to a certain degree. SAP is giving you the license inside the Amazon when you procure the Amazon HANA One system. Some key takeaways. Breakthrough real-time and public cloud. Again, there's been a lot of marketing juice around HANA. There's been a lot of discussions around HANA. If you're at Sapphire, there wasn't a lot of HANA marketing material, banners, but every single conversation had something to do with HANA. So it's absolutely the number one priority in SAP's world. Here's a great way for you to get to the HANA world, take a look at how it can help me as a company, and leverage this utility type environment that Amazon has provided for us. It's tailor-made depending on what project use case you have. It's simple. It's very simple to use. It's got a lot of flexibility for power users. Again, you're going to leverage some of the old school for power users with business objects. So if you're using business objects today and your power users like it, very simply you can get that large data set sitting in the cloud in Amazon in the HANA system and allow them the same access that they have today. And you can do it yourself and pay as you go. That's probably a very large reason, to leverage this type of environment, because it's pay as you go, which is a lot easier than the huge infrastructure commitments that you need to make and the licensing that you need to get from SAP when you go through the on-premise environment. And instant access to SAP HANA. It literally does take you 20 minutes to click on that button and have a HANA One system up and running. Obviously, you need some HANA kind of Amazon geeks to help you out, meaning internally in your company. If you have experience with this or you have someone that's technical, they can figure it out very quickly. It's very scripted and very prescriptive on how to go through the processes that you need to go through. Again, here's my contact info. We do a number of POCs for customers. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I think we're also going to table right now and answer some questions as well if you have any. And here's some areas where you can find more information about it. So feel free to jot these down. I think we'll make the presentation available as well.
We will. Thank you, Ray. And thank you, Steve, for providing us with an in-depth look at SAP HANA One features and some of the benefits to solve those BI and big data challenges that folks have. Folks, if you've joined us late, we do invite you to ask a few questions. We've got a few more minutes, and we've got a few questions already coming in, so feel free to submit questions to Ray or Steve directly. Steve, Ray, I'm going to point this question back to you. You mentioned that the SAP licensing in some detail, but can you just clarify for folks, do I have to bring my own SAP license over when I come to AWS?
Depending on the product, Sherry, you do. In this particular case, for HANA One, no. So the SAP HANA license is included in the fee that Amazon is charging you per hour, and it was on one of the slides. I think it was $3.49 an hour. I did mention some other tools, and there are some licensing agreements with that. So Business Objects, for instance, you would have to have your own Business Objects license if you wanted to leverage that within HANA, and that would happen like you did today. And some of the other tools, Visual Intelligence and HANA iPad Access, they may require licensing agreements from SAP to use. I know they're giving out some of those for a 90-day free trial so customers can use them and experience the tool set with HANA. But again, I think to answer the question, for HANA One on AWS, no, you need no licensing from SAP today. If you want to leverage some of those tools like Business Objects, you will need a license to use them. They can run in the cloud as well, and we have many POCs that have the Business Objects in the cloud as well as the Amazon in the cloud, but we do have a license from SAP for that Business Objects in the cloud.
Great, thanks for clarifying. And one additional question, Ray, is I know this is why we have partners such as Rennie Tui to help customers get started, but can you talk a little more about, how do I get my data into HANA? That's often a question customers have, and certainly they can reach out to you with Rennie Tui and get started, but can you share a little more depth around that, what people should think about?
Yeah, the simplest way, and it probably depends on what the scenario is. So if it's a scenario that the development team wants to experience HANA and show it to the business to see the benefits of it, the quickest and easiest way is to either FTP a file into the HANA environment and load it in, or upload it from your client into the HANA One instance on Amazon. Now, there might be some degradation in loading that because you're going over some internet lines, right, and your upload and download speed makes a difference. But if it's just a POC that you're kind of start, that's absolutely the way to go to move that data quickly. The second would be this new cloud integrator tool that SAP has. It's a combination, and it's a little lighter of the SAP Data Services, which is one of their ETL tools. ETL stands for Extraction, Transform, and Load. That's probably the second easiest one. It's a free tool from SAP, I believe, and again, I've got to double check that, as I mentioned during the presentation. It's very quick to be downloaded, and you can set it up to read any type of data and connect into the HANA system and load it. So I think that would be the second alternative. There were some other tools I put out there. If you have the LT replication server set up in your environment, a lot of customers don't. They typically set it up for HANA. But if you had that set up, that's another way to get it out. And then finally, some of the I think it's Info Hub tools in SAP BW can connect into the HANA system as well. So I think there's a number of tools. I think it depends on the case-by-case scenario. I think the net is, rest assured, there's many ways to get that data into it. FTP and flat file uploads would be the first and foremost if it's a POC.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ray, for clarifying. So with that, if you've submitted questions, we'll follow up with you offline, but I'd like to thank Ray Kelly with Rennie Tui, who's a principal with a consulting partner, as well as Steve Jones with Amazon Web Services. And before you drop off, folks, I'd like to invite you to just take a very brief survey, give us some feedback. It helps us set the stage for future webinars, and we appreciate you joining us today. And that concludes today's webcast. Thank you very much.